Hey guys, Jay Hoyt here. Before we get into today's video, we've been telling you guys at the start of every single one of these videos that we are inching closer to 250 subscribers. So if you haven't yet, or if you are brand new here, make sure to subscribe, turn on post notifications, and enjoy the video. What's going on, guys? Jay Hoyt back with you today. Welcome back to NHL 24. I'm still getting used to saying that because we haven't really made much videos on it. That was awful grammar, but either way. So I was scrolling through, I think it was Instagram, maybe it was Twitter, some social media site, and it actually had a pretty good kind of a post for once. And it's talking about potential changes to the NHL, and I'm assuming these are all, like a, hey, what if this could happen? Or what if that could happen? Or this is what that person thinks. And I wanted to go through them kind of one by one. We got the graphics here, and I wanted to kind of go through these, kind of talk about them, and see what we think. So let me know down in the comments section below as we go through them. There is 10 of them total. So let me know down in the comments section below as we go through them. So the first things first, hopefully I remember to put all these in the video, but changes to the NHL needs to make the 1 seed versus the 8 seed for the playoff format return. So the 1v8 playoff seed format returns. So I'm assuming this means still the same way to make the playoffs, right? 2 teams from each division, or the top 2 teams from each division, and then the top 2 teams from the wild card, meaning 8 teams per side, per conference, and then, kind of forget how they got to the playoffs and get to that final 8, and then rank them, I'm assuming, on regular season points. And of course, there's probably going to be tiebreakers in there, and then just rank them 1 through 8, and then typical, playoff bracket or any bracket, way they do it is 1 versus 8, 2v7 would be on the bottom. Then you have, what would it be, 3 versus 6, and then 4v5, and it'd all be in there and all jumbled up and whatever. But I definitely like this, right? I think this could be a better way to, balance out the bracket, if you will, right? So the player or the teams that just barely squeak into the playoffs shouldn't have to fight the team that finished, let's just say, 6th in the let's just say in the Eastern Conference. And it's like, well, what if that team's not so great, but they're better than, most everybody else? And then it's like 2 bad teams going at it. So I feel like this could be a better way to do the playoffs. I always have thought the NHL has the best playoff system there is. When you look at everyone else, it's just not close, if you ask me. But I would say I would probably be pretty in favor of making this change to the NHL. Our next potential change is changing the maximum contract length to be 5 years. Now, this is actually one that I could go either way with. So when I think of a 5-year contract, so from right now it's 2023 to 2028, if you're signing somebody to a 5+ year deal, either you're a superstar, you're a huge name free agent, you're a guy that's been around and been really dependable, and, if you're asking me personally, I would almost have that as an unwritten rule. Maybe it would be written down somewhere, but in my opinion, if I'm going to offer somebody a 5-year contract or above, they better be my superstar. They better be my star players. They better be committed to being here long term. Now, I know that's, going to be different for every player, especially how the team is doing, how the organization is doing. Are we consistently making the playoffs? Are we doing well? We always have a chance for the Stanley Cup. Or are we just kind of like a rebuilding team, a kind of just a bubble fringe team? It all kind of depends. But do I think this should be an actual rule? I mean, I could almost, and I hate to not give an answer on this one, but I could almost go either way, right? I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to it because I would probably do it if I was the GM of a team, to where like I said, unless you're a star player, I probably wouldn't offer more than 5 years, because a lot of times you see players that sign these big contracts, these 6, 7, 8-year deals, and then they want out after 2 years, after they fail to deliver what their kind of expectations were, or they aren't what they the team isn't what they thought they signed up for. So I definitely wouldn't oppose it, but I would almost have that as an unwritten rule anyway. So I guess I would say a neutral but in favor, I guess, to make that change. So I would say 100% in favor of making this change. So change number 3, even if a power play goal is scored, the power play itself will last the full 2 minutes. Now I know there is another one later on here, which I almost want to do together, but of course we'll have to come back to this point. But here's the thing, right? Now, let's just bring it up. So the second shorthanded, or the second change that is also related to the special teams is this one. So it says shorthanded goals instantly ends the power play. So here's the thing. Now, this is the same post. This is the same person that put up both of these. So in my opinion, right, you can't have this both ways. So a power play. Now, what is the benefit of a power play, right? Someone committed a penalty, right? Now they are off the ice. So now you have an extra person, right? So the punishment for that is you sit in the box for 2 minutes. So you give the other team an advantage. Now, once the team that has the power play has scored, then that kind of adds to the punishment, right? You have an extra layer on top of just being at a disadvantage for those, let's just say, 2 minutes. But now, if you're looking at the other point here, where the shorthanded goal instantly ends the power play, then I don't know how to feel about that, right? So if the shorthanded goal instantly ends the power play, but if you score a power play goal, it lasts a full 2 minutes, then I don't know how both of those would live together in the same league, right? So I don't know how you would tweak that, right? Because you're giving more of an advantage to a power play, but then you're almost adding more to the team that's shorthanded if you're implementing both of these rules. So if we're just sticking with the power play point as itself, if a power play's goal is scored, it will last the full 2 minutes. I would probably I feel like that's a similar, it could go both ways to me at least, right? So, I would think stick with how it is now, right? If you score on the power play ends, and you obviously get the goal, and then you're back at 5-on-5, you reset from the middle, and then you keep going. But then we have, if it's a 5-minute major or, a double minor, then it kind of stays, you stay on the power play even if you score a goal. So, I don't know. I feel like this one could go both ways. I'm a little more on the fence on this one than I was the last one. But it's definitely an interesting point that would, be a great conversation piece. The next one, I think this is number 4. Changes to the NHL, number 4. A 10-minute 3-on-3 overtime. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm all for, hockey being as entertaining as possible, right? It already is, in my opinion, the best sport in the world. But here's the thing. I don't like the 3-on-3 overtime at all, right? So I was talking to, a few people about this, and in my opinion, the best way to decide a hockey game usually is just continuous OT, right? Now, I know this would make the games longer, and I don't want to be at a hockey game for 5 hours, right? Because I'd probably end up leaving with everyone I went with. But I don't feel like the 5-minute 3-on-3 overtime with a shootout afterwards, if nobody scores in overtime, I don't feel like that's the best way to decide a game, right? I would much rather have continuous 5-on-5 overtime, next goal wins, right? Plain and simple. Now, if we're going to stick with a 3-on-3 thing, then you got to almost make some rules in there where I think it's actually might be a later on point here, but you can't leave the zone in overtime to group up or to reset. Now, I feel like, if we tweaked it a little bit where it kind of forces you to, keep playing as much as possible, then you're going to have, see some tweaks here and there. But if anything, in my opinion, I would 100% change it. Continuous OT, even make it 10-minute periods or maybe 20-minute, keep it there. I don't know. But I would love to see, something happen with the way overtime works because, over playoffs, we already have the continuous OT, and then regular season, we play something completely different for OT. So, in my opinion, let's switch to continuous OT for all of the overtime rules. So, in this case, I would not be in favor of this one. Thumbs down. Our next point number, what is this? Number 5. 3 points for a win, 2 points for an OT win, and 1 point for an OT loss. So let's see if I remember this correctly. So you get, right now you get what? 2 points for a normal win, and then there's an extra point for the OT loss. So they're just trying to make it straight up 3 points for a win, and then obviously in a regular regular time game, obviously the losing team would get nothing, but for an overtime loss, you would still get a point. Now here's the thing, and I know this might be a little controversial and a little bit, up for a debate, but in my opinion, you should just get, 2 or 3 points, whatever you want to make it be, for a win, and then if you lose, you almost shouldn't get anything, right? I mean, you lose, right? You lost the game. So why would you get a point and the other team gets 2 points? Like, that doesn't really make sense to me. So if you win in overtime, you get less points? Like, I don't understand how that one would work. So, in my opinion, I would definitely tweak this a little bit. I mean, would I be against this? Not really. But still, I'd love to just see it like any loss, you don't get any points, but obviously for wins, you do. So I guess we're back to post 6 here, talking about the shorthanded goal once again. So I know we talked about it earlier, how they would work together, but let's talk about this point by itself. So a shorthanded goal would instantly end the power play. So again, this would create a lot more teams to probably change how their penalty kills operate, so that if you have a speedy guy or certain players on the ice, or let's just talk about Vegas for a second. You're having Jack Eichel kill penalties, and then you have Chandler Stevenson out there, you have Mark Stone out there, William Karlsson, those guys that definitely have talent that can score shorthanded goals. Then you'd get a little bit more aggressive on the penalty kill. That do we want to just kill the time, or do we want to try to go for a goal, right? So, I feel like teams already try to go for, goals if you're on the penalty kill. Not necessarily like that's the only goal, but if they have a good opportunity, they usually go for it. But would I be in favor of if a shorthanded goal instantly ends the power play? This would be up for a really good debate, too. Now, this one I'm definitely on the fence over. I could definitely go either way with this one. But for the most part, I maybe would be in favor of that. But again, I feel like that'd be a big debate. Once you get, let's just say, 32 GMs together, you'd have a pretty good conversation about this. So here's another change, talking about the one earlier. I almost should have put them in order. That probably would have been a little bit better. But once entering the offensive zone in overtime, you cannot exit the zone to regroup. Now, again, we briefly mentioned it earlier, but here's the thing. Okay, so let's just say they do, right? They do go out of the zone. What happens, right? Do you get a penalty called against you their probably thing would be a delay a game, or do you move the face-off down? What is I don't want to say punishment, but what would be the next step, right? After that team goes in the zone and let's just say they wanted to come out of the zone to kind of regroup, change lines, whatever it may be, what would you call afterwards, right? Let's just say this rule gets enforced and it gets put in play, implemented. Then what do, right? Is it a penalty? Is it the face-off goes down to the other offensive zone? Does it get called as a delayed game? What happens if this rule that hypothetically would be implemented, what happens if you break that, right? Now, of course, they might argue, oh, well, the other guy, poke checked it away or this or that. And then you create such a fine, gray area with this that, okay, he knocked me out of the zone and I wanted to keep the puck. So, I don't feel like I'd be in favor of this one, honestly, because, again, what would happen? You're regrouping for a reason, right? Whether you need a line change, whether you just want to kind of reset, whatever it may be, try to catch the other team sleeping, whatever it may be, I don't see why you would make a rule out of this, especially given if it happens, then what would the punishment be? So this one I probably would not be in favor of unless it was more fine-tuned to what would happen afterwards. That would be a big kind of, big weight on the vote of if this would be a rule or not. So, as it sits from this post alone, I would not be in favor. Thumbs down. Post number 8, and this I think is copied almost directly from the NBA. And let's just start with no. Absolutely not, right? Playoff, so what it is, playoff play-in tournament. So I don't know if it's talking about, let's just say the wild card teams or what exactly they're talking about. But let's just say for the sake of the conversation for this post and this thought alone, that the playoffs work exactly the same, where you have the 3 divisions, you have the 2 teams that are coming from the wild card, and your playoff tournament would be from only your wild card teams. And then it's the question of, well, how many games would you play? Where would you play them? And it's a lot of extra effort and extra games for no reason. I already feel like we have a really good playoff system, and I don't feel the need that this would be a good idea, because let's just say you end the season, what's the usual end, April something, or that's April 15th or something, but let's just say you end April 15th, right? You have a playoff tournament for the however many wildcard teams, and now you have, you're at least going to have one game. Do you make it single elimination? Because then that's not really fair. Do you make it best of 3? Who do you give home ice advantage to? Do you play at a neutral site? And then, okay, so now you're playing a best of 3, and you're not going to play back-to-back-to-back days, so there's going to be at least a day in between, at least some of those games, right? So now you're pushing from end of playoffs to a week, maybe 2 out, because it's a tournament, right? So usually tournaments are all played in the same venue. So then who are you going to argue over who's going to host this tournament? Or do you just travel to whoever has the home team? Right there, there's so many question marks around a playoff tournament, and especially given the teams that made it in, I don't want to say easier, but made it in more clear-cut out of wild card, then they're waiting an extra 2 weeks for their first-round opponent to be there, right? And it doesn't make sense to me, right? I was never a fan of a playoff tournament, right? That's what the whole season's for, right? We play 82 games. All of those games mean something, right? Get your points in then. You battle down to the end. There's always a couple of teams that are fighting for spots. right at the last part of the season, in the last month alone. Sometimes gets to be almost like playoff hockey, or even after the trade deadline. Some of those games are really awesome, really fun to watch. So as far as a playoff tournament go, no, I would not be in favor of that. Thumbs down. So what is this? The 9th point, I believe. I think it is. So Connor Bedard's over here showing it off. So potential change being the entry-level contracts are raised to a maximum of 5% of the salary cap. And I'm guessing that number is from this year, but being $4.175 million. So I'll automatically say it immediately. I would not be in favor of this. And here's why, right? So let's just say you have a guy like Nail Yakupov that comes out of the draft, wants this maximum of 5%, $4 million for 3 years, and especially given that there's a salary cap, then you're paying $4 million for a rookie for 3 years. He ends up being a bust, and now you're stuck with that money that you could have easily spent on 1 or 2 players, or maybe a good player that wants $4 million or whatever. And I feel like right now the way we do it already, with an entry level contract being was like $925 or something for 3 years, plus all your bonuses and whatever, and it's already good enough. You're already making a crap ton of money, and then assuming you live up to the hype of being a top draft pick and your team wants to keep you and you want to stay there, you usually end up signing a big contract. Sometimes there's a bridge deal in there where it's like 2 years at $2.5 million or 2 years at $3.5 million or whatever it is. And then usually you sign like an 8-year deal for like $8-9 million or whatever. And then you're already making big bucks, right? 5 years into your career, you're already making the big bucks. So, I mean, would I be opposed for this being an option? Maybe, maybe not. But I don't feel like I would be in favor of this. Like, if I had to vote on it, I'd probably vote no. Just because we already have a good enough system as it is that with a salary cap, I don't feel like it would work. And our last point for today's video is a puck over the glass, delay a game, gets treated like an icing. Now, here's the thing. Very, very, very rarely, and I would say probably almost never, a player shooting the puck over the glass would be on purpose. And do I think this would be a better option? So right now, if you put the puck over the glass and it doesn't touch the glass or a net or anything else, then it is a delay of game. The other team goes for a power play, and then you're shorthanded, right? So I almost would prefer this change, right? It gets treated like an icing. So now you shoot the puck out, then it stays in your offensive zone. Right, I think I'd be much more in favor of this rule, almost more than anything we've talked about tonight. Right, I feel like this is probably the best point, and no, I didn't just save it for last, but I feel like this is probably the best point that you could have made this entire time. Right, I would 100% agree with this. I hate the seeing a delay of games. Especially if you lose a coach's challenge or something, then that's a delay of game penalty. No, it should not be that, right? I get it. You should be selective over your, challenges, which I think teams already are. But then I feel like a lot of times there's teams that don't take the coach's challenge when it might be really close, but they don't want to fear, going shorthanded. So I think if I had to vote, I would 100% be in favor of this. Puck over the glass gets treated like an icing more than a delay of game penalty where you get to sit in the box for 2 minutes. So 100% be in favor. But that was all 10. So like I said at the start of the video, let me know your guys' thoughts on all 10 of these points down in the comment section below. If you forget some of them or want to go back to it, make sure to scroll back in the video, watch, to see the graphics. But, these were some really good points. Potential changes to the NHL. Sometimes rules can be really stupid. Sometimes things just don't make sense. But sometimes changes are needed. But, as we discussed, some of these could definitely be implemented and be a really good thing. But some of them, I don't really think they'd be a good option for the NHL. But like I said, let me know down in the comment section below what your thoughts are. But with all that being said, guys, that's gonna do it for today's video. If you did enjoy the video, hit the like button down below. Like we've said the last couple of videos, we are inching closer to 250 subscribers. So if you haven't yet, or if you're brand new here, make sure to hit subscribe, turn on post notifications so you never miss an upload. And as always, guys, we will see you in the next one.